Brace yourself, because I am about to completely and systematically demolish every fantasy you have ever entertained in your mind about how women really think. I know, right now, you're leaning back in your chair with an arrogant certainty that you understand female psychology. After all, you've consumed hours of YouTube videos, read a plethora of articles, and perhaps even bought that bestseller about the female brain that promises to decode all its mysteries. But here's the truth. Naked and brutally raw, you understand absolutely nothing. And as shocking as it may seem, the blame is not entirely yours. No one ever bothered to teach you the truth. On the contrary, society has indoctrinated you with a constant stream of Disney fairy tales and predictable romantic comedies. They sold you the narrative that women are ethereal, complex, and enigmatic creatures who need to be deciphered like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, a mystical puzzle to be solved. What if I told you that understanding women is, paradoxically, much simpler and infinitely more complicated than you have ever dreamed? Simpler because, yes, there are undeniable biological and behavioral patterns, and more complicated because you have spent your entire life looking for answers in the wrong places, analyzing the wrong clues, playing a game whose rules you never knew. Do you know what is genuinely comical? In a tragic way, the amount of mental energy that men waste trying to dissect why a woman hasn't replied to a text message. They gather with their friends, turning a simple digital silence into a criminal investigation. She only used one smile emoji instead of 3. What does that mean? Her reply was okay with a period. Is that a sign of contained fury? They create conspiracy theories, analyze screenshots, enter a state of paranoia. Meanwhile, the woman in question is simply sprawled on her couch, binge-watching a series on Netflix, having completely and utterly forgotten that she received your message 3 hours ago. You are fabricating a psychological thriller of epic proportions inside your own head, while she is just living her life, immersed in her own universe of worries and interests. This is the first and most fundamental lesson you need to internalize. Women do not spend their time analyzing your every move with the same forensic scrutiny you apply to theirs. They do not hold secret meetings to debate the hidden meaning of your text messages. In the overwhelming majority of cases, they are simply reacting viscerally and immediately to how they feel in that specific moment. I vividly remember when I was 22, there was a girl at my university who seemed to have been sculpted by the gods. Stunning, incredibly intelligent, the kind of woman who seemed to belong to a parallel reality, completely out of my league. Consumed by obsession, I spent weeks orchestrating what I believed to be the perfect approach. I became a sort of CIA agent of relationships. I mapped out her class schedules, discovered which coffee shop she frequented, what books she checked out from the library. I knew her routine better than she did. Finally, after planning worthy of a military operation, I mustered the courage to talk to her. And you know what happened? Absolutely nothing. She was having a terrible day because her pet cat was sick and had spent the night at the vet. It didn't matter what genius opening line I had rehearsed. It didn't matter how charming I tried to be. Her mind was miles away, worried about the cat. I was completely invisible. 2 weeks later, I bumped into her by chance at a loud, crowded party. Without thinking, I said the first thing that came to my mind, something completely stupid about how the music was unbearably loud. And by some mystery of the universe, we ended up dating for 2 long years. Why? The answer is simple, and at the same time, profoundly frustrating for the male mind. Because in that moment, at that party, she was emotionally receptive. She was in a good mood, relaxed, open to new connections. The stars aligned. It wasn't because of my brilliant conversation about noise pollution. This is precisely what the overwhelming majority of men fail to understand. A woman's emotional states are like weather patterns, volatile, unpredictable, and, most importantly, outside of your control. You cannot negotiate with a hurricane. You cannot reason with a blizzard. You can only check the weather forecast and decide whether to bring an umbrella or sunscreen. But what do most men do? They act like frustrated shamans trying to change the weather with dances and rituals. They truly believe that if they say the magic words, wear the fashionable clothes, earn the right amount of money, they can force the sun to shine all the time. This is not just ineffective, it's delusional. A woman's mood, her openness to intimacy, her level of interest, all of it fluctuates based on a million factors that have absolutely nothing to do with you. Her hormonal cycles, accumulated stress at work, the quality of her lunch, A trivial fight with her mother? The cancellation of her favorite show? You, man, are just a single solitary variable in a mathematical equation with thousands of others. But this is where the analysis deepens and becomes truly interesting. Women themselves do not fully understand the mechanisms of their own psychology. Ask a woman to explain why she chose her current boyfriend. She will readily provide you with a list of logical and socially acceptable reasons. He's so kind to me. He's very funny. He has a stable and promising job. But the truth is, all of this is post-rationalization. It's the logical brain creating a coherent narrative for a decision that was made on a much deeper, more primitive level. It's the same as asking someone why they like chocolate. The person will state the obvious. Well, it tastes good. It's sweet. But the real reason is a cascade of complex chemical interactions occurring in their brain, releasing dopamine and other substances they aren't even aware of. Women, just like men, make decisions based on emotion and only then build a superstructure of logical explanations to justify those decisions to themselves and to the world. Female psychology operates on what I call the retrospective narrative principle. They first experience an overwhelming emotion, attraction, repulsion, comfort, fear, and then their conscious brain works feverishly to build a story that makes sense around that emotion. She feels an inexplicable attraction to a man, and then begins to find the reasons to justify that feeling. It's the way he looks. It's the confidence he exudes. The feeling always, invariably comes first. The logical explanation comes a distant second. This is why it is utterly futile to try to use logic to argue your way into a woman's heart. You cannot present a PowerPoint spreadsheet detailing your qualities and expect it to generate desire. As you can see on slide 3, my credit score is impeccable, and my mother attests that I am a very handsome young man. Not only does this not work, but it is also profoundly unattractive. I am going to reveal something that will likely shatter your paradigms. Women, in the vast majority of cases, do not know what they want until they experience it in practice. They believe they know. They create detailed mental lists, as if they were building a car with optional features. Tall, dark, handsome, with a good job, a sharp sense of humor, who likes dogs. Then, in a twist that defies all logic, they fall head over heels for a short, pale, unemployed guy who makes them laugh maybe once a month. Why does this paradox happen? Because what women verbalize they want, and what actually triggers the primitive attraction switches in their brains, are two completely different, often opposing things. It's like asking someone who just had lunch what they would like to eat. The person, without the stimulus of hunger, will list healthy and sensible options: a salad, grilled chicken, maybe a piece of fruit. But put that same person in a situation of real hunger, after hours without eating, and they will devour gas station sushi without a second thought if it's the only option available. Instinct overrides stated preference. The biggest and most common mistake men make is taking women's stated preferences at face value, treating them like an instruction manual. A woman says on a date that she loves a nice guy, a gentleman who brings her flowers and opens the car door. So what do? You become the epitome of the nice guy. You become the most efficient emotional butler on the planet. You open every door you see, as if you were a professional doorman. You buy so many bouquets of flowers that the neighborhood florist knows your credit card number by heart and greets you by name. And then, to your utter confusion, she starts dating the guy who forgot her birthday, who is chronically late and who probably doesn't even know what a flower is. And you're left standing there alone with your wilting bouquet thinking, "But you said you wanted this." Yes, she said it. But saying and feeling are two completely different languages, and you were listening to the wrong translation. Here is a truth that will sting, but it is liberating. Women are biologically attracted to men who do not need them. The more you show you need her validation, her attention, her approval to feel complete, the less attractive you become in her eyes. Think of it as a law of relationship physics. Your attractiveness plummets in direct proportion to your neediness. But what do most men do? The exact opposite. They make the woman the gravitational center of their universe. They cancel their own commitments and hobbies to be available for her. They shape their personality, their opinions, and their tastes to align with hers. Basically, They abdicate their own identity and become a satellite, desperately orbiting around her. And then, they are genuinely shocked when she loses interest. She lost interest because you became boring. You became predictable. You became an absolute certainty, a prize already won, sitting on a shelf. Women are programmed by millennia of evolution to be attracted to challenge, to mystery, to the unknown. Not because they are players or manipulative, but because uncertainty is what triggers the mechanism of emotional investment. When something is too easy, too available, too certain, the emotional intensity of the chase drops to zero. It's like watching a thriller movie whose ending you discover in the first 5 minutes. What's the point of continuing to watch? But men, in their linear logic, think that being reliable and consistently available is an attractive quality. They say, "I will always be here for you. You can count on me. I'm not like other guys." And they are right. They are not like other guys. They are boring. Now let's dive into emotional validation. Men, in their simplicity, believe that women yearn for someone who agrees with absolutely everything they say. "Yes, dear, you are absolutely right. That person at work was extremely rude to you. Your boss is a tyrant for expecting you to do your job." But this constant, subservient agreement does not generate attraction. It generates contempt. Women test men all the time, not in a conscious Machiavellian way, but as an instinctive mechanism to gauge the strength of their character. If you agree with everything, if you yield in every minor dispute, you are failing every test. You are demonstrating that you have no backbone, that your opinion is malleable, and that your internal structure is weak. And, despite everything modern society tries to tell you, women feel zero attraction for men without backbones. Do you know what women really desire? On a level that they often can't even articulate themselves? They want to feel emotions, and not just the good, comfortable emotions. They crave the entire emotional spectrum: drama, excitement, uncertainty, overwhelming passion, and even occasional frustration. This is why, to the bewilderment of many, incredible women often stay in relationships with men who are objectively bad for them. It's not because they enjoy being mistreated, but because these men, with their unpredictability and chaos, make them feel something intensely. The nice guy who does everything right, he makes them feel nothing. Comfortable, maybe. Safe, for sure. But passionate, excited, vibrantly alive? Never. I had a friend, a hugely successful lawyer, a good-looking man who treated women like queens. He was the complete package that every mother dreams of for her daughter. And he couldn't keep a girlfriend for more than 3 months. Do you know why? He was too perfect. He never disagreed, never challenged their ideas, never created the slightest spark of tension or conflict. A date with him was like a perfectly rehearsed play, predictable, safe, and deathly boring. His last ex-girlfriend left him for a bartender who still lived with his mother and had a serious gambling problem. Why? Because that bartender was an emotional roller coaster. One day, he was the most romantic man in the world. The next, he was cold and distant. One week, he was planning their future. The next, he said he wasn't sure about commitment. It was constant emotional chaos, and she was completely addicted to the thrill of the ride. This leads us directly to female communication. Men, in essence, communicate to exchange information, to solve problems. Women, on the other hand, communicate primarily to create connection and to process their own emotions out loud. When a woman comes to you and starts describing a problem at work, your male brain immediately switches into solution mode. She is describing a problem, so obviously, she wants a solution, right? Wrong. Completely wrong. She does not want you to solve her problem. She wants you to understand how she feels about the problem. She seeks emotional validation, not a practical action plan. When you, with the best intentions, say, "It's simple, just tell your boss you can't work on weekends," what she hears is, "Your feelings are irrelevant and an inconvenience. Just fix it and stop bothering me." You believe you are being helpful and supportive. She believes you are being cold and dismissive of her emotions. Women speak in subtext, in layers of meaning. When she says it's fine, the chances that it's not fine at all are extremely high. When she says, "I don't care where we eat," she most likely has a very strong preference and is testing to see if you know her well enough to guess. When she says, We need to talk. Your relationship might be minutes away from ending, but understand this. In her mind, she is not being dishonest or manipulative. To her, the real message is perfectly obvious through the context, her tone of voice, her body language, and your history together. She assumes you are picking up on all these subtle cues because that is exactly how women communicate with each other. They are masters of the art of reading between the lines. We men, by comparison, need clear and direct subtitles. Female sexual psychology is a universe of its own. Men are like light switches, on or off, simple, binary. Women are like those professional sound mixing boards with 100 different knobs, faders, and sliders. Absolutely everything affects their sexual desire. The lighting in the room, whether they felt bloated that day, a strange comment you made 3 hours earlier, the phase of the moon, a movie they watched. Seriously, everything matters, and it doesn't follow a linear logic. A woman can be madly attracted to you one day and feel complete apathy the next, and neither of you did anything different. Female sexuality is, for the most part, responsive, not spontaneous like male sexuality. A man sees a woman he finds attractive and instantly interest is triggered. Women, on the other hand, need context. They need emotional connection, the right mental state, to feel safe and desired. This is why a single woman can go months, even years, without thinking about sex. But in a relationship where the right emotional triggers are activated, she might desire it daily. It's not about a primary physical urge, as in men. It's about an emotional and psychological state that needs to be cultivated. Create the right emotional environment, and her sexuality blossoms. Focus only on the physical aspect, and she closes up like a clam. Here is a concept that is rarely discussed openly. Women are immensely attracted to men that other women desire. This is called pre-selection. If other women have already validated you as attractive, your market value instantly skyrockets in the eyes of a new woman. It's the restaurant principle. An empty restaurant at peak hours? The food is probably bad. A restaurant with a waiting list out the door? It must be excellent. The social logic is the same for men. A man who is always alone with no female attention? There must be something wrong with him. A man who seems to have options, who is desired? He must have high value. This is exactly why men who get into a relationship suddenly start receiving much more attention from other women. It is not a cosmic coincidence. It is the psychology of pre-selection at work. They also operate based on what I call retroactive jealousy. Their interest in you increases exponentially when they feel they might lose you to someone else. And again, this is not a conscious game. It's an emotional survival mechanism. The possibility of loss triggers a deeper emotional investment. When you are always available, always present, a puppy waiting at the door, there is no risk of loss, and therefore, no emotional spikes. But when you have your own life, when you are busy with your mission, when you have other social options, suddenly you become a scarce resource and consequently more valuable. It is the most basic law of human psychology and economics. We want what we may not be able to have. The modern woman is trapped in a psychological crossfire. On one hand, society and pop culture bombard her with the message that she must be independent, strong, self-sufficient, and in need of no man. On the other hand, her biology, forged over millions of years of evolution, still instinctively responds to traditional masculine traits: strength, leadership, the ability to protect, decisiveness. The result is a profound internal confusion. She says she wants a sensitive man who cries while watching romantic movies with her, but she finds herself irresistibly attracted to the stoic man who remains calm and unshakable in the midst of a crisis. She says she seeks an equal partner to share all decisions, but her body responds to the man who takes the lead and says, "We're going to this place. Trust me." This internal conflict is the source of much of the chaos and dysfunction in modern relationships. And as if that weren't enough, social media arrived to completely scramble what was left of sanity in female psychology. Every woman, regardless of her appearance or status, now has access to an endless stream of attention and validation from hundreds, if not thousands of men at any given moment. This has created an artificial hyperinflation in the sexual marketplace. Average. Women begin to believe they deserve top-tier men because they receive likes and direct messages from these men online. But attention is not intention, and it is certainly not commitment. Just because a successful entrepreneur liked your bikini picture does not mean he sees you as marriage material. But female psychology does not make this distinction so easily. To the brain, attention and validation feel like real attraction and value, even when they are superficial and fleeting. The brutal truth about female mate selection can be summed up in one word: hypergamy. Women, by instinct, seek to partner with men who are at an equal or, preferably, superior position to them. They date up or across the social hierarchy, rarely down. A female doctor will rarely feel attracted to a male nurse. A female CEO will hardly consider dating her male secretary. And this is not a form of conscious discrimination or snobbery. It is a deep biological programming. Women are instinctively attracted to men who demonstrate they are above them in some relevant hierarchy, be it financial, social, physical, or intellectual. This is why you hear so many successful women complaining that there are no good men available. The truth is, there is an abundance of good men, but few that they perceive as being above their own level of success. Which brings us to the concept of the wall, a controversial but undeniable topic. A woman's attractiveness, based on fertility and youth, reaches its absolute peak in her early 20s. A 23-year-old woman is at the height of her power in the sexual marketplace. She has more options than she will ever have again. A 23-year-old man, in contrast, is usually just starting his journey, with little market value. By age 35, the situation is dramatically reversed. If that man has used his time to build a career, a physique, and a reputation, he is at the peak of his attractive power, with more options than ever. The 35-year-old woman, on the other hand, sees her options drastically diminish. This time, mismatch is tragic. When women have maximum power, they often waste it in search of an unattainable, perfect man, or by getting involved with low-commitment men. When they are finally ready to settle down, their bargaining power has already diminished considerably. It is a cruel reality, but ignoring it is a fatal mistake. Here is what I really want you to burn into your mind. Female psychology is not a mysterious or impossible code to decipher. It is just fundamentally different from male psychology. The catastrophic mistake men make is trying to understand women through their own male lenses. Stop projecting your own psychological framework onto them. Stop expecting them to think like you, react like you, or want the same things you do for the same reasons. They are operating on a completely different software, programmed by evolution to prioritize different things. Once you accept this fundamental truth, everything starts to become clearer. You stop taking their reactions personally. You stop getting frustrated by behaviors that, to your logical mind, seem irrational. You stop trying to force square pegs into round holes. The biggest and most liberating revelation is this: you cannot make a woman want you. You cannot convince her through logical persuasion. You cannot impress her into submission with material provision. And you cannot modify your behavior to fit a checklist of prerequisites and expect attraction to blossom. Attraction is not a conscious choice she makes. It is a biological and psychological involuntary response to certain stimuli and triggers. You cannot negotiate desire. You cannot buy it. You cannot argue it into existence. And you certainly cannot earn it through good behavior. It either exists or it doesn't. And whether it exists or not depends far more on these primitive psychological triggers than on your objective value as a person. Understanding these triggers, deeply comprehending female psychology, that is the true key that opens all doors. But the sad truth is that most men will never take the time to truly understand. They will continue to use the same strategies that never worked. They will continue to get frustrated, and they will continue to blame women for being complicated when in reality they are just different. And it is this difference, this polarity, that makes the whole game of attraction so fascinating. Once you finally understand the rules of the game, you gain the power to decide if you want to play, how you want to play, or if you prefer to simply stand up and walk away from the board. But at least now, after hearing all this, you finally understand the rules. If this brutal and direct analysis made any sense to you, if a light has been switched on amidst the confusion, comment the word game below. I want to know who has really understood the rules of the board and is ready to stop being a piece and finally start being a player.